Welcome back to another episode of The Whole Journey. My name is Rebecca, and today we are going to talk about what do you do when you thought you did everything as best you could and it still all went horribly wrong. Did you hear God wrong? Did the enemy get a hit in? Did you not hear God at all? And how do you move forward? Let's get right into it. Like I said, this is called balanced living, not perfect living, okay? The only perfect one was Jesus. So I'm gonna start off by saying, as you guys know from previous videos, I firmly believe that we can and do still hear God actively. We can have two-way conversations with him. We can hear him through dreams. We can hear him through the Bible. We can hear him through prophetic words, prophecies, things like that. So if you don't believe that, a lot of this is not going to make sense, but I would love for you to hear out the video and hear my heart out all the way to the very end so that should you ever feel like you did hear God on something, you know how to proceed in a situation like this. So I'm going to give you guys 3 examples of a time where I did not hear God, a time where I thought I heard God and I still didn't really know what happened, and a time where I know I heard God, but it still did not turn out the way that I thought it was going to, and how I did things right and how I did things wrong in each of those situations. So when I was in Colorado, I felt God leading me to start a business, and I did, and everything was going really well. And then a bunch of really chaotic life situations happened. I got into a relationship, it was really bad. I got out of the relationship, and instead of seeking God on if it was wise to continue to pursue being a business coach, I doubled down and was going to make it work because I had started finding my identity in that business and I wanted it to work out. And when everything started going horribly wrong, I thought, oh no, but I've heard God on this and I know that this is all going to work out one day, so I'm just going to keep doubling down. And unfortunately, God had to literally shut all of those doors to get me to understand that I was holding on to something out of fear instead of because I had heard God and because he wanted me to continue pursuing it and breathing on it and putting effort there. And I'm gonna be honest, that was one of the hardest times that I realized I had not heard God or heard God wrong. And it took me a long time to be willing to acknowledge that I had heard God wrong because of the emotional hell that I was in when I was needing to hear God correctly. So my first little side tangent is, it is absolutely possible to hear God wrong or to think that you've heard God when it's actually something else, like a false God or a false Jesus or just your voice in your head, because there are times where we have pre-decided that we need this to be the outcome, and that just isn't God's heart. But because we're human, we can't grasp it not being this specific outcome, so we hold on to it. And it is something that everybody has to learn at some point, that when you genuinely feel like something was God and then it all falls apart and you look back and you realize it was God at one point, but you didn't hear the place to let go, that is key. In spiritual maturity, it takes time and experience, unfortunately, to understand when something like that happens. But from that experience of waiting too long to acknowledge that I had heard God wrong, it made me more willing to be wrong quicker. And I find that very encouraging because in the next 2 situations that I am going to talk about, it was necessary that I had an experience of not hearing God correctly and moving forward, having that willingness to know that to hear that I had heard incorrectly to be able to move forward. So one of the second times that I heard God in this situation, I'm not really sure what happened. God told me very specifically that he wanted me to go work for a company and that he was going to bless me while I was there. And I got there and everything was amazing and everything was great. And then slowly things started deteriorating and I ended up only being with that company for 3 months. As I was leaving and as I was putting in my notice with them and letting them know it wasn't going to be a good fit, I asked God, I was like, God, did I do something wrong? Did I not hear you? Everything lined up the way that you said it was going to, but the outcome still was not at all what I felt like I had understood it was going to be. But I had heard God correctly. I just hadn't heard him on how long I was going to be there or what I was going to be accomplishing when I was there. But looking back now, again, I understand that he accomplished what he wanted to in that situation. I learned some very difficult but very valuable lessons in an environment that was controlled. And I was able to, for the first time in my life, seek God through the stress of actually leaving a situation when I knew I needed to leave a situation instead of staying longer than I should have. In that situation, I still, looking back, really don't know if the enemy got some hits in, if he created chaos in the environment and I actually was supposed to be there longer, or if everything truly was only supposed to be 3 months from the get. Like I was only ever supposed to be there for 3 months and that's okay. Even if it felt like people were going to look at me and be like, didn't you just say like 3 months ago that this was the job that God wanted you to take? Like I do not know what all happened there, but I can look back and trust that God worked everything out that he needed to. And even if I screwed some of it up, or even if I didn't handle some things in that situation perfectly, that God was still able to accomplish what he wanted to in me and in the other people that were there. The third situation, I am actually still walking out right now. It has been the weirdest, most surreal experience. Hearing very specific things regarding a situation that God wanted to bring and watching them manifest very specifically, like a list of 10 to 12 things that God said very specifically were going to happen. And then shortly after it started happening and I was seeking God and seeking confirmation and all of this amazing stuff was happening, then all of a sudden the situation completely cut out and ended with, I had no idea that it was coming. It went from everything going perfectly, exactly the way that God said it was going to the door slammed shut. That was it. It's over. And I was like in shock for a second because I look back on all of these things that could not have been coincidence. And I was like, okay, this is God. All of this lines up. This is all continuing to be God. I'm praying about it. Okay, I'm going to step out into this situation. I'm going to have faith that God's going to bring about what he wants to bring about in this. Like, God, thank you that you are bringing a promise to pass, that you are bringing provision in this area. And then when the door slammed shut, I had to do the exact same thing that I did in the last two situations I talked about. And I had to ask, did I hear you wrong? If I did, how did I hear you wrong? Where did I go wrong? Did I want this to be something that it didn't actually end up being? Did I have influence over this? Do I have something unhealed where I was trying to make this into something that it wasn't? Was I insecure in other areas and was seeking this and wasn't realizing it? And it took time. And it is still taking time to hear God on how to proceed regarding that situation, while also completely letting go and moving forward, knowing that even if I completely screwed it up, that God can and will make all things work out for my good. In this situation, it's just like the title of this video. I genuinely felt and still feel like I did everything that I could to the best of my ability. That does not mean I was perfect. It doesn't mean I got everything right. It doesn't mean that I'm ever going to get everything right. I can look back and tell you exact places where I got things wrong, where I may have pushed timing a little too fast, or I may have gotten a little nervous and gotten a little flighty, but was still like, okay, God, if you want this for me, then it's for me and everything's going to be okay. So when the door slammed, the first thing I did was How did I screw all of this up? What did I do to break this, to cause this provision that God was bringing to get slammed in my face? And that was it. What did I do wrong? And I think that we definitely should ask if we did something wrong. But in a situation where you have handled something so carefully with prayer and fasting and wise counsel, and if everything still goes wrong, the only thing you can do at that point is stay at God's feet and just keep watching what he's going to do with the situation. Because there have been times where I've prayed in faith for a physical healing, or a healing for a family member, or for provision to be brought financially. And I have prayed in full and complete faith, stewarding everything to the best of my ability, and it hasn't come to pass. And that's not because I didn't do everything that I could do, or I didn't have enough faith. And it's not because I wasn't praying with the right people or didn't pray the right prayers. It was just because it wasn't God's will. And that's okay. And I think that's one of the hardest things about people who genuinely feel like they hear God, is that sometimes you pray and believe and have faith for something that doesn't come to pass because it wasn't God's will. And sometimes you pray and believe and have faith for something that is God's will, and the way that it comes about and the way that it happens is not the way that you thought it was going to be. And it just doesn't make it any easier when it happens. But we can't stop pursuing hearing the voice of God just because we get it wrong sometimes. We need to, like I said earlier, be willing to hear that we heard wrong, be willing to get it wrong, be willing to be corrected, be willing to receive feedback. But at the same time, when we are called to trust that we hear God's voice, and we are called to believe that he is going to work all things out for our good, even if we screw some stuff up, at some point we have to charge forward valiantly in obedience, even if the risk is it not going the way that we thought it was going to, or the way that the promise was for that situation. It can be really hard to swallow. I've lost a lot of sleep over trying to figure out in each of these situations what I could have done better, how I needed to pray differently, if I wasn't praying hard enough. And I put all of the blame on me. But honestly, I also had to deal with a lot of disappointment in God, because especially in this situation where everything was coming to pass the exact way that God said it was going to, when it got taken away, my human reaction was, you said this was for me. I was doing my best. Could you not keep it? Like, are you not powerful enough? Did you not care enough? You know, are you actually up there with your arms crossed deciding that I didn't deserve this when I wasn't even the one that asked for it? You brought it up. And it is a situation where anytime we hear God wrong, we absolutely have to, number one, acknowledge our emotions regarding that situation. But number two, come out of agreement with the lies that we are hearing or believing because of something happening that was out of our control. In this situation that I'm in right now, I am actively having to come out of agreement and covenant with lies regarding God not being powerful enough or God not caring about me. I come out of agreement, covenant, bond, and contract with the lie that God is not big enough or powerful enough for this situation. I come out of agreement, covenant, bond, and contract with the lie that God did not care enough about this situation to protect me from being hurt by it. I come out of agreement, covenant, bond, and contract with the lie that God doesn't care if I get hurt by situations, and that God didn't protect me, and that God allowed me to be teased by this, by something happening that was really exciting and amazing. And he just doesn't care. Like, I actively have to stay on top of identifying lies and understanding that those are not God's character. And I have to replace all of it with truth. God, I thank you that you are the one on the throne, that you see the entire situation from start to finish on all sides. You know truth, you know what was the enemy, you know what was me getting stuff wrong, you know what was, these people getting stuff wrong, you know what all's going on. And I can and will trust that no matter what the outcome is, I can release this to you and trust that you are going to do what you said you were going to do. And no matter what, it's going to be for not only your good, but also for my good, because you care about me. We can hear God wrong. We can also screw things up. But in all of that, we have to remember that every opportunity like this is a chance for us to understand, do we have some lies that we're believing about God, his character, us? Are we insecure? Do we have, some relational issues that we need to work on? Do we have some issues with finances that we need to work on? Do we have some beliefs about money or beliefs about health or beliefs about whatever that we need to work on because of this situation? And also understanding that being persistent and pursuing God and seeking his face and staying with him, even when things don't go the way that we thought they were going to, that is another key aspect of emotional and spiritual and mental maturity. Is even when the rug gets pulled out from under us, we have to stay by God. And if that's the only thing that I learned about myself in this situation, is even when I thought like the provision boat was coming in and everything that God had said that he had been going to do was coming to pass, and then the ship veered off and it looks like, something happened. I don't know what happened. I don't know what went wrong. I don't know. Even in that moment where everything changed, despite what I was hearing and praying about and seeking confirmation on, I learned that in that moment, no matter what I thought I was going to get and what was taken away, I stayed by God's feet. And not for a single moment did I genuinely think. Fleeting thoughts are very different than developing a belief about something. Never once did I ever genuinely believe with every part of me that God did that to tease me or couldn't handle it. Unfortunately, I think sometimes we can have part of us that believes that, but then like the other part of us doesn't believe that. So you have to address the thoughts and the trauma aspect of maybe God doesn't actually care. You got to squelch that part so that your spirit can stand forward with truth. But it was very, very important for me to realize that even in a situation that did not go the way that I thought it was going to go, and really I don't believe the way that it was actually supposed to go, even in that situation, God is still on the throne and he's good. And despite my questions, I stuck around. And I think that some of us can think that, or even believe the lies of the enemy, that if something like that happened, like the enemy will get in your face and be like, if something like that happens to you, you would walk away from God. And until that happens and you are confronted with a situation where it feels like you're losing everything, and you see that Holy Spirit's, power in you and Holy Spirit moving through you allows you to stay in relationship with God and dig into his presence deeper. It's like, until you see that you didn't walk away when the world would have understood if you did, those are the moments where your faith is fully tested and where even we can start having confidence that God is absolutely moving and healing us in ways that we may not even understand until we're fully under pressure. When my grandfather got sick, he had an aortic aneurysm in 2022. And when he had the aortic aneurysm, I got a call. I was woken up. My dad called me crying. Papa had an aneurysm. He's not okay. He's in a coma. He had no blood pressure when they got him on the Helivac, like all that kind of crazy stuff. I felt this stilling sense in my spirit that he wasn't going to die in that moment and that I needed to just be at peace. Well, 8 months later, shortly before he passed away, I had this dream that I knew was from God, that he was fully and completely restored back to all of his mental faculties, his physical faculties, all of it was completely restored. And for several weeks, I prayed and believed and prayed and believed and prayed and believed that God was capable of doing that. And my heart fully believed that he could if he wanted to. But he didn't. And he ended up passing away. And I had an opportunity to respond in a way of, God, why didn't you? And I'm so mad at you and I can't believe that you didn't. But in that moment, understanding that I had done the best that I could with the faith that I had, and it's not just up to us sometimes. It's not just up to our prayers, that it was a moment that I got to choose whether I stayed with God or I walked away. And in that moment, I chose to stay as well. And this is not like a rah-rah, I'm such a good Christian. That was a pivotal moment in my faith. That moment when nothing went the way that I thought it was going to, even though I hadn't technically done anything wrong, I was having faith in something that I thought God was asking me to have faith in, that just because it didn't happen or didn't happen the way that I thought it was going to, doesn't mean that I had done anything wrong. And it also didn't mean that God was wrong or bad. When we can partner with God in these seasons of not understanding what's going on, and people making decisions that hurt us, or companies making decisions that hurt us, or somebody changing their mind about you when you were like, this is a promise from God. It is in those key moments where spiritual maturity and being refined like silver is very important, because at that point we have to forgive ourselves, forgive God, and forgive others, and choose to move forward in faith, brush the dust off, figure out where we went wrong, if we did anything wrong, if we heard wrong, receive some healing, and then just keep walking forward. We can't stop living or can't stop seeking the voice of God when we feel like we've gotten it wrong or when something doesn't go the way that we thought it was going to. Life is unexpected and it's hard. And there are so many elements at play all the time. If you play golf, there is a video of a guy who's dropping golf balls down a little ramp, and he drops 5 golf balls off at the exact same time, at the exact same speed. They all are going to the exact same cup, but 3 go in and 2 don't. So under the exact same circumstances, the exact same ball, the exact same everything, 3 go in and 2 did not. So sometimes it's just obeying when we feel like we need to obey, doing everything to the best of our ability, and letting our hands go of the outcome. This is the pot calling the kettle black. If you are called to hold out for something, hold on to it like this. There are some times where we just may not get the outcome that we think we're gonna get. And that's okay. That doesn't mean that God doesn't have something better, or it doesn't mean that God can't bring it around again and it be better than the first time we thought we were gonna get it, or bring something different or whatever. It's all an opportunity to stay in a relationship with God, to seek his face, and to keep developing our understanding that God does not lie, he doesn't change his mind, and the only thing we can do is do our best. And aside from that, we can't expect perfection from anyone except for God. I hope that regardless of how you're doing, if you've heard some things right and they haven't turned out well, if you've heard some things wrong and they haven't turned out well, if you've just completely screwed it up and are waiting for God to put the pieces back together, I just want to give you some confidence that God has worked with some very broken, bad people the entirety of the existence of the world, and still is able to use them for his good and marvelous and amazing plans. So if he can use these very broken people in the Bible, he can use you even if you screw it up sometimes. Just don't quit having faith that God will do good and amazing things, even with a very broken and imperfect vessel. So I just want to encourage you. We all go through stuff like that. It's not fun, but it is so worth it to stay with God and to see things through all the way to the very end. Have a great weekend. I hope that this benefited somebody. If it didn't, that's okay. Thank you for sticking around to this point, and I will see you Monday for Monday Motivation and next week on the next episode of The Whole Journey.